Artist interview number 3. We are with, what's your name?
Angie Atkinson.
Angie Atkinson. What are you doing right now?
I'm tuning my ukulele.
Your ukulele?
That's right.
What do you do? What's your art?
I'm a musician.
You're a musician? You play ukulele?
I play ukulele. I play ukulele kind of not super well. I am a singer-songwriter, and I picked up the ukulele because I felt like I needed a stringed instrument. It's just easier to communicate with with other stringed instrument musicians, who are the people I work with the most, primarily like guitar players, bass players, etc. It's easier if you can speak that language. That's not bad. I just yeah.
So you're a musician, you say?
I am a musician.
And you're also a singer, right?
I am a singer, yeah, sorry. I went into a spacey place thinking about the nature of musical communication.
That's funny, actually. What was that thought that was going through your head then?
Well, the thought that was going through my head was that, like, I used to always write with keyboards because it was the one instrument that I knew well enough to sort of, like, I knew theory, musical theory.
Uh-huh. Where did you pick up musical theory?
In school, like grade school, the music program that I was in grade school, high school, in Starkville, Mississippi. Actually had a very good, you know, grasp on teaching musical theory, and so I learned a lot from it there. A lot about it there, but I knew keys well enough to, like, you know, play chords and sort of write by playing chords, but I found that you can't always, like, have a keyboard with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't just, like, tote one around. I mean, I have a keytar, but I don't know.
What's a keytar?
A keytar is like one of those keyboards that's shaped like a guitar. They were very popular in the 1980s. And mine is red. It's a Yamaha.
You have a red keytar.
I have a red keytar. It's pretty fierce. But no, it's something small like this is easy to carry around. It's easy to just quickly, like, you know, strum chords for somebody on. It's only 4 strings, and I have itty bits hands and a chronic nerve pain condition, so, like, it's super easy for me to play. Not as cumbersome as a guitar, though guitars are wonderful, and I do wish that I could play them.
So you're a singer. Are you primarily a singer?
Primarily
you said
a singer,
you
yeah.
told me that you were a musician, which surprised me because I know you more as a singer.
Yes.
You said musician. So, but is it that you see yourself mostly as a singer, or how do you describe your singing to me?
I feel like singing is like a subcategory. Do you know what I mean?
A subcategory of
musician.
Okay.
I feel like it's only one of the things that I do because it's okay. For me, I said musician instead of just singer because for me, to be a musician is to choose to tell stories through the art of music, right? Like actors choose to tell stories through the art of acting, and artists choose to tell stories, you know, through the art of you know, visual art, I guess. That was poorly explained, but you know what I mean. And it's like, and there are different subcategories and like branches underneath that. But a musician is just like the broader like umbrella, I guess. And I guess if I had to choose what my primary musical instrument was, I would say my voice. But I like to express myself musically in other ways as well.
You come from Mississippi.
I do come.
Are those your musical roots?
Some of them, and it's so funny that you say that because, like, for a while, like, I kind of avoided that part of me. I hated
What
it.
part of it?
Well,
part of
okay, no, not the musical part, the Mississippi part. Like, I hated it there. Like, that's not to say that there weren't, like, amazing people and experiences, because there were a ton of amazing people, amazing experiences, certainly amazing food. But it was a difficult place to be someone who was kind of left of center, a little quirky, and like, you know.
And that's how you noticed yourself or saw yourself?
That's how I sort of saw myself. Well, I noticed, I was like, I don't really fit in so well here. Like, I'm having trouble making friends, and, you know, I like to dye my hair and like wear weird clothes and stuff like that, which, I mean, they weren't weird to me, but they were perceived as weird by other people. And so, you know, I had a hard time. I had a really
And was that a process of realizing that?
I kind of figured it out pretty quickly, but I mean, I realized the older I got, the more apparent it became. Well, because the more solidified my identity became. And it's interesting too, because I feel like the more resistance I got from my peers about who I was and how I was, like, the more I wanted to be that. You know what I mean? Like, I bleached my hair blonde when I was in the 7th grade. And They called me Old Yeller for a year.
Old Yeller?
Oh yeah, and like so my response to that was be like, oh yeah, well, okay, and I dyed my hair black, just to be like, all right, you didn't like blonde? How's this? How's this? I like it. This is kind of fun. Think I can do this for a while, and like it in a way like shaped my identity. But it's like it was such a painful time, and like I was bullied a lot, and it was not the look. It was not
How did
cute.
that, if at all, shape the kinds of music you make?
Oh, well, it just, I've always been kind of an emotionally sensitive person, and like, I don't know, going through painful experiences, and hopefully if you learn and grow from them, like makes you just more aware of the human condition in general, you know, which makes it easier for you to tell stories about it, like to tell stories about the human condition and be like, because you identify patterns. Oh, this person feels this way. Well, they feel this way because of this event, and you just kind of realize that we all have the same stories. It's just kind of different characters telling them, or you know what I mean? But we all kind of go through the same universal human pain. And
You identify a lot with the music you hear? Or,
yeah, like, and I think that, and that's why I wanted to make music, is because growing up, feeling like this weirdo in this small town, I felt alone and misunderstood and not like, you know, like, and so to hear music, I would hear people singing these songs and telling stories about feelings that I was feeling, and it made me feel less alone, you know what I mean? And so, it's like Kermit the Frog said in the Muppet movie, the first one, like Dom DeLuise is talking about how he's like, you know, come to Hollywood and make millions of people happy and blah, 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 blah. And he gives him this whole list of like wonderful dreams that can come true. And the one that Kermit like focuses on is millions of people happy. And it's like...
Is what?
Millions of people happy. You know, like that's the thing that like speaks to his heart. And it's not that I'm trying to please everyone, but it's just to be able to speak to people and say, hey, listen, you're so not alone. You're so not by yourself. Like, we are all going through what we're going through, and the only way that we should really go through it is together. You know what I mean? Like that idea to me is what makes music so compelling, because I feel like it's a language that I can speak that helps me relate to other people.
So you relate to other people, but also help other people relate to other people.
Yeah, exactly, and to themselves. You know?
Where
like,
are we right now?
Where are we right now? We're in a playground in Central Park.
In New York City, right?
In New York City.
So
There's little kids around. This girl has on a little red dress.
Over here?
Yeah, she's got a little pink hoodie. She's standing there being it's her little skirt.
So did you come here from Mississippi to did you go straight from Mississippi to New York?
No, it was a very long my journey of self-discovery was a long one. It was a really long one. Because I tried to cram myself into conventions, and the harder I tried, the worse it got.
Wait, that's interesting. So you noticed you were quite different.
Yeah.
When you were in Mississippi.
Right.
And then now you tell me you tried to fit into conventions, which almost seems like you're normalizing and making yourself same.
I tried to.
Right.
I thought, well, maybe this would be better. You know, like maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. But I mean, it's always been sort of like a back and forth, like ebb and flow journey for me. Like I dropped out of high school, and because I was like, this, like, can I swear? Is it alright if I swear?
I don't know, why not?
Fuck this. I was like, I'm not learning anything except how to survive like savage beatings. And so I was like, yeah, it was, so like I dropped out of high school, and then I got my GED, and then I worked at a radio station for like a year and a half, like this indie radio station, and as a DJ and a news anchor, because I have this low voice, you know. And
as a DJ, were you handling music, I presume?
Yeah, and it was cool because that exposed me to a lot of like interesting. Because my exposure to music up until that point had been mostly relegated to like pop rock radio,
right.
Like, you know. And my parents were huge consumers of all different kinds of music, but it was all stuff that was on the radio. I mean, different genres, you know, like everything from like the Shy-Lights and like Michael Jackson to like the Rolling Stones and Barry Manilow, like everything, you know, Elton John. Like they listened to everything, and I had a great deal of like pop music influence in my life, but it wasn't until I started working at that radio station that I got exposed to like indie, you know, sort of different, more left of center like kind of music, and that was a really great experience because of that.
And your voice, you said you had a deep voice for radio?
What some of my friends have described as smoky tones. I have I've always had kind of a low speaking voice, which I get from my mom. She also has a very well, you know, we joke about it. We both have the same phone sex voices. It's like sort of low, husky speaking voices. My singing voice isn't always low. In fact, I can get pretty high, but there's always that sort of earthy quality to it.
When you were at the radio station, were you making music?
No, I really wasn't. It's funny. Sometimes when you can do something really well, it makes you almost shy about sharing it, you know? Because people look at you differently, and it's not always good. And I was coming from a place of just wanting people to stop picking on me.
How do people look at you differently, or how do you fear people would look at you differently in light of sharing this talent or gift?
Well, if it's something that they can't, there's no way to say this without sounding like an egotistical.
Go ahead and sound it.
There's just no way. If you, it's the same with like, say something like, you know, like the Malcolm in the Middle kid who was a math genius. Like, it's a specialized something that, you know, John Q person can't necessarily do. When in the presence of something like that, I have found either one of two responses if it's not something that they also can do. Like other musicians don't really react, or other, you know, don't really react quite the same way, but like they either look at you like, wow, that's amazing what you can do, or they look at you like, you're weird, I don't like you.
Is there almost a sense of jealousy that you can do something different?
I'm sure that, you know, from a psychological standpoint, that's probably where it comes from. But
I'm just watching your facial expressions and trying to understand what that might mean.
Arrogant to say that, like.
It didn't sound arrogant to me. It seems I'm actually even listening to you say this for the sake of other people who are watching this who might feel the same thing, trying to get a sense of what is that feeling that they're going through.
I would imagine it's probably jealousy or just like, or feeling like, you know, that's not a skill that I have, and I resent that I don't have it, and, you know, I mean, like, people would get angry with me, or they would, like, laugh at me for singing well, you know, like, I won a talent competition in the 8th grade, and I got booed, you know what I mean? Like, and that, what do you do with that? I mean, like, it made me not want to sing. It made me want to keep that sacred, you know, like, keep that to myself, because when I shared it with people, they had such a awful response to it, but not everyone. Like, some people would be like, you're so gifted, why don't you share your gifts? Why don't you share your gifts? And I'm like, because people are mean about it, because people are awful about it, why would I want to?
So you're at the radio station,
yeah,
and you're listening to all this new music, this independent music that you hadn't been exposed
like
to.
16 years
you have
old,
this voice.
16,
You weren't
17 years
16 or 17. Were you in Mississippi?
Still, yeah, at that point I was. Yeah.
And how was this? Was it making you want to get your voice out a little bit more? I mean,
a little bit.
You're
there was always
vocal centric, I imagine, not being on a radio station, being a voice, a DJ.
Sure. It did to a degree, and like I was going to see a lot of live music at that time too, because I was hanging out with a lot of the people who worked at the radio station were musicians, and my brother was in a garage band. Like, musicians were always just sort of like around me, and I always liked hanging with the band, and like, you know, and there would be times when I'd be like, I don't just want to hang with the band, I want to be in the band.
Not a groupie, but you were just like a friend.
Yeah, I just liked the vibe, like the energy, and the way that, like, I don't know, I felt like when people were on stage and singing, like we were communicating, you know what I mean? Like, and I just got really into that whole vibe of just, and I love watching musicians perform. I love watching them communicate with each other while they're performing. I love that whole thing, and yeah, it made me want to be a part of it. But again, I had this like just crippling insecurity about it, and I've also always acted, so I started focusing on acting.
So you didn't go into music?
Not initially, no.
Artistically, you went into acting?
Artistically, I went into acting first. And it's funny because I always wanted to do one or the other or both, and use one maybe as a means to another, or vice, you know what I mean? Like, but I chose to focus on acting. I think because it was something that I really liked and felt I had good instincts for, but I also thought I could use some honing on. Like, I felt like I needed training, whereas music always came a little more naturally to me. And again, because my voice had become sort of like that private thing that I was almost like afraid to share in some ways, you know? And like I was timid about it.
Do you remember the first time you decided, I'm going to play with my voice?
The first time, like, oh God, I've been, like, since I was a little girl.
So that was when you were young?
Yeah, maybe. Like I mean, like, we lived for a very short time when I was when I was a kid in Muncie, Indiana, from like, I don't know, 1980 to like 1987. and we had this like hearth in our living room with like an elevated mantelpiece in front of the fireplace, and just like track lighting above it, and like I would stand on that and like sing along to like my parents, like Olivia Newton-John tapes and like and stuff like that. Like I always loved singing. My parents were always singing too, like in church choir or whatever, or just around the house. And so singing, the act of singing itself, not necessarily in front of other people, but the act of singing itself was always a very natural, easy.
So that was so maybe
of my life.
Maybe the question I mean more is, do you remember the first time when you decided that you were going to sing, I don't know, in public, more formally, in a band? You help me.
I don't know, like, well, because I always did, it's, like I said, it's always been an argument in my head. I had a couple of times when, okay, I remember in the second grade, our school did this, like, it was the 200th anniversary of like the Constitution or something. I don't know, maybe 250. I don't remember, and I'd have to do like some mental math and think about it for a minute, and that's way too much effort at the moment. But like, it was some sort of, yay, United States historical landmark something. Let's have an assembly in the cafetorium thing, and so they had like a big fuck off cake that was in the shape of the American flag, and we all like filed up there one by one, you know, in our little Oshkosh clothes, like, you know, to get like a little piece of cake, and yay, America, you know, and our principal was dressed up in like an Uncle Sam suit, and we're like, ah, it's so funny, it's Uncle Sam, you know, just little kids being kids doing kid shit. And so I'm going up to get my cake, and I kind of start singing under my breath, like, I think it was America the Beautiful. And like, just because I was feeling, you know, I was having a moment. I was like, yeah, man, yeah, America, yeah. You know, I was feeling like real patriotic and like feeling real good about it. Like I was like, yeah, this is what's up. And you know, it was swelling in me, so I felt like expressing it. And so I kind of started, you know, like kind of singing it under my breath, but then the principal heard me and stuck the microphone that he had under my mouth. And so I sang the rest of the song for the whole school, and everybody was like, oh my God! And my chorus teacher was like, I didn't know you could sing like that. Like, that's the thing, they didn't know, because I was so shy about it, like so painfully shy about it. And like, and that was the first time that I ever sang in front of a large group.
You said that was
people.
Second grade?
Second grade. So that would have been about, like, well, I don't care.
No, you don't, yeah,
well,
it's
I don't
okay.
care. That would have been about 1986, 87.
Yeah?
Yeah. So.
All right, so I guess even more to the point, so you're in New York now.
Yeah.
Are you in a band?
I am. Well, I mean...
Have you cut an album?
No, I'm working on that right now.
Are you a solo artist who's cut an album? EP? Anything?
I'm working on it. This is what I've done. I started writing, and I created a bunch of pretty fully realized demos on like GarageBand. Little Apple software plug for you there. And I'm happy. Those are good to like show to musicians to be like, this is kind of like a digital copy of like the, you know, organic sound that I would like. I've been over the past, because I didn't make the decision to start, okay, you know what, screw acting. Well, that's not true. I still act a lot, but to be like, I'm putting acting as my secondary focus and putting music as my primary focus. I didn't really do that until maybe like the end of 2010, like, or summer of 2010. And
Where
then
you put acting a bit aside and music more in the forefront of your life?
Yeah, and I started writing. That was the first thing I did, was just writing.
Lyrics, music, both?
Music, all of it. I started just, you know, burying myself in that, and just, you know, anytime I was feeling anything big, I would just start jotting down lyrics, or like if a melody came to my head, I'd be like, what is this melody? What is this? How does this, what kind of story is this melody telling? You know, and then if the melody came first, then I would write lyrics around that melody. You know, or if the lyrics came first, then I would write a melody around those lyrics. It doesn't have like a definitive way that it comes to me. It's kind of one or the other. Like,
how do you write music? I'm a little ignorant of the process. Did you sit down with a staff? Is that what it's called?
Oh no, I don't. I actually don't really. I mean, I suppose I could. It would take me a really long time. I don't, because I'm. There are many musicians who can do that. Some that I know personally and greatly respect and admire. But I can't sit there and like write out notes.
So how do you write the music?
Basically, I'll get a tune in my head, and like a rhythm or an idea, and I'll like I don't know, just start playing with it. I'll either start, it depends, like sometimes the words come first or sometimes the melody comes first, and
you play it on an instrument.
I'll play it on an instrument, I'll sing it out loud, I'll sing it into a tape recorder, you know, and it just sort of, it's like putting together pieces of a puzzle, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, I hear this little snatch of lyric in my head, oh, that would sound good if I sang it like this. No, maybe a little bit more like this, and then when I hit something that I like, I'll record it in some way or another, and then just slowly start kind of culling those bits together, and until like I have a fully realized idea. Like, I had a song that I did a music video for back in, I guess, January. I could be wrong about that, but it was called Ukulele Love Song, and basically how that song happened, like just to give you an example, was I had a really incredible experience, and the experience was so incredible, and I'm not going to go too much into the details of it, but it was a great experience with another human being that had a profound impact on me. So what I did was I just started jotting down impressions, like all of the things, like, because the whole experience was very cinematic, as I find a lot of experiences in my life tend to be. I don't know how much of that is self-created or how much of that it's just, you know, life happening or just maybe my perception of it, but it seemed very cinematic and rich with imagery. So I just started jotting down impressions, like things that I thought at that time or things that I witnessed during that experience or things that I felt during that experience, and you just started writing it down like free form poetry. And then I kind of got a fractal of a melody in my head and thought of that melody and looked at the words that I had jotted down and was like, okay, and kind of took this thought and wrote a line or two, and then was like, okay, but that goes really, okay, and just kind of like put it together, you know what I mean, into a complete thought. And you know, and then once I kind of had a structure of like a melody, you know, and a rhythm and all that kind of stuff, then I just kind of filled, it was like filling in a coloring book or something, you know what I mean? It was like I had drawn the lines, and now I was free to just sort of color it in. Does that make sense? Like, it's interesting, and that's generally how it kind of goes. It maybe, you know, not like steps 1, 2, and 3 might vary a little bit, but generally the outline gets created, and then once the structure is kind of in place, then I just kind of color in, like fill in.
Are songs done for you? Does it reach a point where you realize it's done, or are they always works in progress? How do you see them?
To a degree, they're always works in progress. The way I think that any artist would feel that way about things that they create. Like, you know, any actor would be like, oh, if only that play like had one more run. There's so many different like choices I could make with that, or like, you know, could have one more week, or, you know, I'm sure that there are many film actors and directors and everything who look at their films and are like, oh, writers, you know, constantly rewrite. Yeah, so I mean, they're always going to be a little open-ended, but I do feel like there does come a point when it's like, okay, I have said what I need to say with this song. Like, I have expressed the thought. I have told the story.
The songs that you've recorded, that you've recorded to this day, do any of them feel like there's you would still tinker with them?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Because right now I just have, like I said, just these sort of like digital demos, and like I'm getting ready to go into the studio to record some stuff later on in the month, and that'll be, oh, it's gonna be so good to like have actual live musicians like playing my stuff, and just the organic goodness that's gonna come out of that. Because to me, that's to me one of my favorite parts about being a musician, is the alchemy that happens when musicians get together and tell a musical story together, and the way that you communicate with each other and ping off of each other. Like,
help me get inside that. Okay. So you've been in the studio with musicians, yes?
Sure,
yeah,
I have.
Okay,
I've worked on different recording projects. Even if it wasn't my music, I've helped other people with their music and done recordings and played live.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about what that communication is between musicians, both in the studio and without the studio, as in like in live performance. But first, like, what is that? Get me inside. So you have a microphone in front of you.
Yeah.
You're listening to the other bandmates playing music live with you at the same time. What are you experiencing? Okay,
let me give you a really great example of that. I'm gonna set this guy down, please.
Nice.
Okay, you're good. I recently got a new drummer. I haven't had a steady drummer. I just always had like sub-in drummers, and it was always like a situation where there was never time to rehearse, there was never time to learn the material. The drummers that I'd been working with, I mean, they were great. They were awesome, like stand-up, amazing dudes, but it was like, I haven't had time to listen to the material. I haven't done this because I'm in a place where I can't always afford to pay my musician. Maybe we can edit that out. But anyway, the point of the matter is that like, people were coming in and they were playing, but it was just like, give me the tempo of the song and I'll play the tempo. They weren't really spending the time, you know, for whatever reason to like get to know the song and like, you know, the story that I was trying to tell. They were basically just, you know, helping me out.
Okay.
But I found a drummer who had, you know, had the time, and you know, we talked about it and like had meetings about it, to like listen to the material and get familiar with, you know, the demos that I have, to kind of know what nuanced things I wanted to make the stories that I was trying to tell with my songs very clear. I have this one song called Having Said It. It's super melodramatic. It's well, because I was very angry when I wrote it, and it came from a very angry place, and so it was percussion driven. I mean, it's a song that I had about a fight that I had with someone, and it's very percussion different, and it has, the way that the song is supposed to begin is, it's very quiet, mostly just vocal and mandolin over like a pulsing bass, right? And it has to, and the mandolin has this sort of like pleading, you know, lightness to it, and the vocal kind of cuts through that, while the bass just kind of supports it, and then there's a little like pulsing guitar underneath it to kind of create a foundation. And then, but it's supposed to stay in this trepidatious like place of hesitancy until the end of the first verse, and then there's a moment of silence, pow, and boom, you know, and then like it kicks in, and like, you know, none of the other drummers had the time to really get to know that and to know that that was what the song needed to be, but this guy did. And so, and this was like a magical moment for me on stage. You know, this is where this anecdote is going.
Oh, this happened on stage,
well,
not in the studio.
Well,
the
yeah,
stage,
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So we were playing a gig at this place called Bar East in the Upper East Side. It was the first gig that I had with this drummer, and like, there was a, we're singing that song, and I started the song. You know, the guy playing guitar like started with those little opening licks, and it had that, and you know, the bass came in, and it was that nice quiet place, and I was like, okay, he's not playing yet, like he's holding back. The drummer isn't playing yet, like he's listened, he knows what he's supposed to do, because we hadn't even had time for a rehearsal before this gig, so I had no idea how it was going to go. Whoa. It was like one of those, he had a week to learn it, and I was like, okay, I hope you know it, you know, kind of situations, and because it was a last minute thing. And so I started singing this song, and it's like, I told you that I loved you, and you walked right out of the room. Quiet, simmer. And I was like, okay. And he's behind me, you know, so I can't even really, you know. And I was like, you said that I was wrong, it was my fault, it was too much too soon. I'm like, okay, he's not playing yet. You said you wanted space, and you had found yourself a place where all you wanted was to be alone. Still quiet. And I wish I could erase the memory of that look on your face and the anger echoing in your tone. And by the time I got to that phrase, I knew that he was going to do exactly what he was supposed to do, and I held my breath. Pow! And now my heart, and I was like, yes! And as soon as I finished that second phrase, like, you know, where I could take a breath in a moment, I turned around and looked at him and was like, yes! Yes!
Was he supposed to play before that moment or not? So he played right. Okay.
He played right when he was supposed to, and he told the story. It's like blocking, you know what I mean? It's like blocking in a play, or like, you know, just that bright splash of red paint on a canvas. It has to be that way to communicate what I'm trying to communicate.
So is it like the difference between a musician with whom you can communicate and a musician with whom you can't communicate is that they have an intimate understanding of the story that you're trying to tell, or you're all trying to tell the same story?
Yes, that's what I feel. Like we all have to be trying to tell the same story. And I know it sounds so pretentious, but to me that's what all creativity is like telling stories. It's like oral history or visual history. You know what I mean? It's like
doesn't sound pretentious to me at all.
Yeah, it's like, well, I don't know. You talk to different people have different perspectives. But like, yeah, to me it's all about telling stories, and like, you know, you just have to find that right chemistry with the right group of musicians who get it, you know, who get whatever story you're trying to tell, and tell it, you know what I mean, in a way that you know that you've communicated what you were trying to communicate in no uncertain terms.
Are you writing songs right now?
I am always writing songs.
What stories are you what kind of stories are you telling these days?
I just wrote one that was sort of like, it's kind of funny, it's almost like a little therapy session for myself, about my tendency, whenever I get into new situations, to either judge them by experiences that I've had in the past, or to try to predict where they'll go in the future, instead of just living in the present and enjoying the present as the gift that it is, which is why they call it the present. No, but I do. I have a tendency to overanalyze and to overthink, and it's something that I've been, working really hard to not do, because every day is a gift, and I don't want to spend every single day like worrying about what's happened before, or worrying about what's going to come in the future. And it was I wrote this song as sort of a reminder to myself of that, like, and constantly. And I started writing one the other day about a man named Donald Brown. The other day I got out of work. I work at a sample sale warehouse to earn my rent, and there's it's at 33rd Street, and I was walking up 8th Avenue to Central Park to 59th just because it was a beautiful day. I got off work early. I had my uke with me. I felt like, sitting in the park and having a moment, and just, unwinding a little bit, get away from the hustle. And I got halfway up 8th Avenue between 33rd and 59th, and I see a man on the street, and he is bleeding from his head. And I was like, okay, and I called 911 because I couldn't not. And he was clearly not sober, but I looked in his eyes, and I kind of made a judgment call that I was like, okay, he's not sober, but he's not dangerous. He was just incredibly drunk, and just not in good shape, and bleeding from his head. And the fact that he had been drinking and was bleeding is always bad, because of the way that can cause more, profuse bleeding, and especially from a head injury. And so, I mean, I'm no doctor or anything, but I've been in enough like emergency first aid kind of situations to know, basics. And plus I watch a lot of ER. Just kidding. Anyway, but so I talked to the paramedic, and she said, we're sending someone right away. Can you stay with him? And I was like, well, yeah, of course, obviously. And so I went into one of the stores that was, right where he had fallen. And I asked for some wet and dry paper towels so that I could just kind of, clean it up to see how bad it was, whatever. And, just ease him in some way. And the guy behind the counter was like, this is for the guy outside, he told me he was fine. And I was like, do you really think he's in a position to make that judgment call right now? So I got the stuff from him, and I sat down with him, and I started to kind of clean it up a little bit, and, just talk to him. And he didn't want me to help him. He was embarrassed. I don't think he knew how bad it was, like how bad the wound was. It was pretty bad. And there's, it wasn't gushing, but there was an awful lot of blood, and kind of coming down his face. And he asked me why I was helping him, and I said, well, because you're a person and you're bleeding, and how could I not help you, And so I sat with him, and it was awful, because when the ambulance did come, he got very afraid, even though I calmed him quite a bit, and he called me his green-eyed angel, which was very, very nice of him. And I asked him his name, and he said his name was Donald Brown. And he got so scared, and when they tried to put him in the ambulance, he was very resistant, and they ended up having to get some NYPD people out there to help get him into the ambulance. But they promised me, I talked to both the paramedics and the police, they promised me that he wasn't getting arrested. It's just that in this condition, they couldn't legally leave him. Like, they had to make him go to the hospital, and they said, he'll dry out, and we'll treat his wounds. And the sad truth of it is that, I am not so arrogant as to think that I saved his life. you know, might have bought him more time, but I couldn't just walk away from it. And the story that I wanted to tell about that was not just about Donald himself and like what he personally had gone through, but just how upsetting the whole thing was for me that so many people just walked by and didn't stop to help, didn't look, or worse, like left, you know. And I was like, this is a person. And I just kept thinking, you know, if it were me, you know, what if it was like a pretty little white girl on the street? What if it was like a, you know, an elderly woman, you know, like, or you know, a young boy or something? But, you know, I was like, is it because he's an old black man? Is it because he clearly looks like he hasn't had a home or a shower or something like that in a while? And it's like, it doesn't, I don't think that we as human beings have the right to make judgments over who deserves our help and who doesn't, you know? Whether they go out and are self-destructive again after we help them, it doesn't matter. That's none of my business. What is my business is that there is a human being on the street in need, and I could do something. And so I did something. And I was so angry after that happened, because I was not just angry, but I think disappointed with people that they couldn't just him, you know, that it wouldn't be everyone else's instinct to just help him. It was so funny because some people that I work with were all like, oh, I can't believe you touched him, like he was bleeding, what if you'd gotten diseases, what if he'd hurt you? And I was like, what if he had, you know? So what? I would not have changed my actions for anything. And you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you're from Mississippi, you're from the South, like you don't know anything about New York. And I'm like, no, I know about human beings in need. You know what I mean? And first of all, I'm here to tell you there's a lot scarier shit in them there hills down in Mississippi than there is up here. You know? I mean, there are places in Mississippi that if you fall down and hurt yourself, ain't nobody there to help you. You know what I mean? There are no Samaritans, good or otherwise.
How soon after experiencing this story with Donald Brown did you find yourself writing a song?
Pretty immediately. I started jotting lyrics down immediately, and after I went to the park and I sat down and started writing.
Right then, from that.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as the situation was over and I continued my walk to the park, I did, on my way to the park, make a few phone calls and stuff to people that, you know, I'm close to kind of, you know, just get through like that, because I'm an emotionally sensitive person.
Can you play any of it on the ukulele?
Oh, I haven't really started writing the melody to that one.
That's okay.
Yet.
I was just curious.
No, that one's still in the lyrical place. That one hasn't developed the.
But you went to the park and you just started.
Yeah, I started writing because it was so present and weighing heavily on my mind. And a lot of times with songs, sometimes they'll all come out at once. Sometimes they'll come out in fractals and bits and pieces. And I think. You know, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on how busy I am in my life. It depends on how able I am to just sort of give myself the luxury of focusing on those things. And, you know, as it turns out, it's been kind of a hectic time in my life, and I haven't had time to really sit down with it and reflect on it and think about it and finish it. But some songs all come out in one shot, and some songs come out in bits and pieces. And this one's kind of coming out in bits and pieces because I think, honestly, I need time to sort of choose my words carefully to tell the story I want to tell, to express my anger and frustration without being self-righteous. You know what I mean? Rather than say, hey, world, I'm mad at you for not helping people, to more ask the question, why don't we help people? You know? Why are we so afraid?
I think obviously your experiences inspire your music. Are there other artists or other influences that inspire you? Like maybe intimately, who guides you or inspires you to speak what you speak, write the songs you do?
I have, from a musical standpoint, I have a pretty wide variety of influences, including, you know, not the least of which being like, you know, people like Kenny Rogers.
What is it about Kenny Rogers?
I don't know. There's something about, there's a warmth to his production. there's a warmth and graveliness to his voice and a sort of earthiness. And also his songs are really, they're stories. Like, they are stories, like, with characters, with names. You know what I mean? Like, Tommy and Becky and the gambler and, like, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, they're very, like, they are stories. Like, not just like, oh, I'm sort of, you know, singing about love, you know, even though I'm telling a personal story, it's told
very
in a way
specific.
it's very specific. And one thing that I like about him, and something that I feel about myself, is that it's something that I've thought about a lot, which is sometimes you want to shy away from specificity because you feel like, you know, oh, if I get too specific, then nobody will be able to relate to it, you know. But it's like, but that's, I think the opposite is true. I think that the more specific you are, the easier it is to relate. Because even though, you know, like I have this song called, you know, Right Into You, and I say the name of this person in this song over and over and over again, and it's like, you know, no, not everyone who listens to that song will have dated that person, but they will have dated someone like that, that reminds them of that, you know what I mean? Like, and the more specific you are, this girl's giggling back here, it's so cute, but like, the more specific you are, the easier it is for people to relate to, because like I said before, like, we all go through the same shit, and like, you know, it's just different flavors of the same dessert, you know, like, and I don't know, it's interesting, but...
Is there someone or something that's different than Kenny Rogers, who's inspiring?
Oh yeah, totally.
In contrast,
sorry, no,
or something?
That was just the first one.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'm curious.
Sure. Okay, who else do I listen to a lot? I love Ben Lee. Ben Lee is great. He's another kind of specific dude. A lot of his songs are like, you know, I'm walking through Central Park, I'm walking up Broadway. Like, he makes like specific references to things that he's doing and places that he is, and his lyrics are just so rich. And he's another person too who thematically, his songs speak to me, because he often has this message of it's all about love and openness and being open to the universe and what it gives you, which is something that I kind of try to live by. And so I'm a huge Ben Lee fan. I love Pink. I think she's fantastic.
What about Pink resonates with you, inspires you?
She's a tough bitch, you know, and like...
Are you a tough bitch?
I try to be. There are parts of me that are soups not tough. I'm definitely a crier.
Soups not tough? Is that what you said?
That's what I said. Super not tough.
Oh, okay.
But no, I'm kind of a tomboy in a lot of ways, having grown up with an older brother and like dudes around like all the time, like, and you know, it just is what it is, you know, there are different kinds of people in the world, and I happen to be a tomboy type person, and so I kind of relate to other tomboy type, you know, where it's like, I am a girl, I am a woman, but I like dudes, and the way that I like to relate to them is by doing the things that they do, or, you know, or that I perceive them to do, you know, it's just like, oh, you like to climb trees? Let's climb some trees, all right, you know, and like, you know, like, I don't know, it's just, I always enjoyed that duality of being a woman but doing man things, I guess. And these are of course things that are, you know, trying so hard to be like PC, because I know this is going to be on the internet. These are things that are, you know, male, female as defined by, you know, Western culture or whatever. You know, male, female relative to my experience of the world, as everything is. But yeah, it's I like her because she's got that tough as nails but pretty as a picture kind of vibe that I really like, and because some of the things that she's been through are things that I relate to, you know, it's just she's telling stories that make me feel less alone. Mm-hmm. Because like, you know, I don't know, her experience with divorce and you know, the heartache that she has felt, she expresses in a way that reminds me of heartache that I've felt and makes me feel less alone. Plus, I just love her gravel, you know, her sexy, like, throaty, like, wailing voice. And, yeah, she's spectacular.
You're a performer. You're a performer not only as a musician, but as an actor.
I am. I have done that as well.
Does your acting influence your... It's probably my last question. Does your acting influence your music? Does your acting influence your music?
My acting absolutely influences my music. I'm sure it adds a flair of the melodramatic to it. And you know, it's easier for me to express myself musically because I think just being an actor, part of that is just being in touch with human emotion. And being in touch with human emotion is you know, how it's the easiest way to convey those emotions to other people. And so acting is just another way in which I've been trained to do that. It's funny, because I was talking to a musician friend about my music the other day and about how it is a little melodramatic. And he was like, but you know, isn't just the sheer act of standing on a stage, like performing music, like singing about your feelings, regardless of how you're doing it, kind of melodramatic in and of itself? And I was like, yeah, you're probably right about that. So yeah, it's just a different, like I said, different flavor of the same treat.
Angie, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.